Okay, we're live. Welcome everybody to the Liberty First Foundation Roundtable Weekly Roundtable. This week we're going to discuss the leaked Supreme Court opinion that essentially overturns Roe v. Wade. And after that opinion was leaked, Congress went into action and started passing legislation which would codify Roe v. Wade. We're going to have a discussion tonight to discuss whether or not Congress actually has the constitutional authority to enact such legislation. With me tonight, I have Jeremy Bishop and Michael Vasquez. So, with that, we'll go ahead and start the show.
Oh boy, it's going to be interesting tonight, I think.
I believe it is.
Yes. Hopefully, we can get some some chatter back from people, and we can, get a little information from other people and hear from them.
Yes, that would be great.
I've just been sending it out to a bunch of people on a bunch of my social media, so hopefully we'll get some more feedback.
Yeah, I'm going to be sharing it on a bunch of groups myself.
Yep.
So let's start off with the simple things first. Here are the facts that we know so far. We know that about 3 months ago, Justice Alito decided that he was going to write an opinion. It's 98 pages long. Almost no one in America has read it, in fact, and they've been getting all their information from various news media outlets that are looking at maybe 3 sentences out of 98 pages worth of comments. We know that somebody in the Supreme Court got a copy of that. We don't know how they got a copy of it. And they then gave it to the news media, Politico, who then turned around and said, let's give this to the rest of the world. These are the facts that we know for sure. Potentially, there have been several crimes that may have been committed. The first one being that it may break 18 USC 641. Nobody knows what that is. Snowden got hit with it. Assange got hit with that. It is illegal to send out or to transfer something of value from the United States that's the property of the United States government, and that therefore is a crime. In addition, depending on how they got this draft, they may have also committed a crime with that. So this is possibly criminal action that breaks the Supreme Court. It breaks an entire branch of our government because it has taken away the one thing that the Supreme Court always had: secrecy and no politics, or at least minimal politics compared to everything else in our government, which is how they could determine our laws and the best interest of the public. Keywords there: best interest of the public. That brings us to where we are right now, which is saying the best interest of America is that abortion. Is it not abortion? Can Congress go out and make a law that serves, that settles this situation, at least for now? And what are the repercussions? Have I summed that all up well for everybody in a minute and a half? That about right?
Yeah. Short answer is Congress has no jurisdiction to make a law on the subject. But long answer, I'll leave to you guys to explain so you can get in depth of it and stuff. We talked about this last week before also about Congress trying to make laws regarding things and what their actual jurisdiction is, and this has nothing to do with it.
I've gotten into quite a few debates this week on this on Twitter because I literally confronted Senator Schumer, Nancy Pelosi, Kristen Gillibrand, and a few others, literally asking them to show me Article section and clause in the Constitution that would grant Congress the authority to enact this legislation. Of course, that stirred up a real hornet's nest, you can well imagine, from the pro-choice crowd.
I wouldn't say it's pro-choice. It's
Yeah.
let's call them what they are. They're pro-abortion. They believe in the murder of babies.
Yes. Okay, the pro-abortion crowd.
And I'm speaking for myself with those exact terms. That's what because abortion is the death of a baby. If we're talking, especially if we're talking about 6, 7, 8, 9 months in, when the baby is viable outside the womb, that's late-term abortion, which is allowed in California and in New York for virtually no reason. It's on demand. That is a fact.
So essentially, in these discussions, people tried to justify Congress's authority. First, they tried to use the Commerce Clause.
All right, that works.
Really? Someone tried that one?
Yes.
Commerce.
Yes.
Okay. That's
and in their statement, they said that, of course, they said that the Commerce Clause was applicable on this. And I turned around and said, well, doctors are licensed by the state that they practice in. Their patients are in the state that they are licensed in. Okay, regardless of whether they come from another state or not, the practice is happening within the state that the doctor is licensed. Thus, it would negate interstate commerce, and it would actually be intrastate commerce.
seems pretty obvious.
So somebody tried to claim, well, what about all the people crossing the border, traveling, the travel from state to state, the medications that would come from other states, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. That would all, I said, those may all be regulated under the Interstate Commerce Clause, but the practice of abortion is still an intrastate affair.
The service is happening in a single state.
Exactly. Exactly. And that's what I essentially explained to him.
Yeah.
And needless to say, that quieted that down. Then there's a discussion about, well, it's just a group of cells. And I'll be right back.
Okay.
So
Commerce Clause, can you believe that, man?
no, it's ridiculous. It has nothing to do with commerce or interstate anything. It's like you guys said. It happens to be like one state issue. I mean, even farther down to like county issue. And I want to touch on one thing. If I'm clear on this, and if I'm not, educate me. But if I understand this right, this is not making abortion illegal. This is essentially making it to where if a state so chose to, they could. Now, I don't know that every state will or many states will, but I would imagine there's going to be a lot of states like California, New York, several that are going to opt out of this, if I understand this right. It's not making it illegal. It's giving somebody the option to, just to clarify.
Okay. To be specific as hell, because I know the major news media is warping people's minds because they're misstating this. If the instant that the Supreme Court were to say Roe versus Wade is overturned, every single state, every law in every state about abortion instantly becomes law of that state. There is no national overriding umbrella.
Right. But,
so New York State, which has late-term abortion, California, late-term abortion, up to the moment of birth, would remain the law of that. And again, it's not new law, not changing law. It remains exactly what it is already. So 26 states would have some form of late-term abortion on the books as they have it right now, the difference in the lives of Americans, of women, does not change at all, not even for a second. So that argument that women are going back to Amy Klobuchar in the Senate yesterday said, well, women's rights are going back to 1850s. That is a absolute substantive lie. Women lose no rights unless you're in a state, and let me clarify, you're not losing rights if you are in a state that actively does not support abortion or have more limitations on it. You're in exactly the same position that you were in already.
Right.
Nothing changes.
Right. That's what I was saying. Like, it's just making it so the other states could, if they wanted to, change their laws.
Yeah, if you could get your legislature and the
But-
governor to sign it, yes.
But they're treating it like this is every state in the nation is going to immediately ban all forms of it. And the way that we're going, that's a farce. It's not going to happen. There will be states that probably do if this happens, but they're not going to just do a complete wipe out of it and start over and make it illegal in every state.
Not possible and not realistic, and is not going to happen.
Right.
In fact, since 2018, several states have enacted brand new late-term abortion laws, including New York State, just because they were afraid that one day, somewhere in the future, whatever changed it, they would have that on the books. So this is a complete lie.
Right. Mike, I don't know if you heard what we were talking about. We were just clarifying what this overturn actually does if it happens.
Yeah. And essentially, Roe v. Wade is not changing law.
Nope.
Okay. And overturning Roe v. Wade does not change the law.
Right.
And that's what a lot of people are assuming, is that this all of a sudden changed the law and made abortion illegal in all the states. And it doesn't. The overturning Roe v. Wade actually does. The only thing it does is it puts the burden back on the states.
Right.
Instead of being on the federal government. It lets the states decide. We have Tarot Destroyer, who has made a few comments.
Love comments. Always love having comments.
Yes, we love it when people join the conversation with us.
Yes.
Maya Angelou supported Black genocide in 2010 with one speech. Maya Angelou praised Margaret Sanger's Planned Parenthood and raised $300,000 for their chapter in San Antonio. Yes, that is one thing a lot of people don't know, is Planned Parenthood was actually started by Margaret Sanger, who was a eugenicist and pushed for the eradication of Black American, of all Blacks.
Before you go further, just so people know, eugenics, and you can look this up, it's with an E, not a U. Eugenics is a ideology, 1930s America, 1920s, that believes in elimination of certain races. It believes in genocide. And so Margaret Sanger created Planned Parenthood to eliminate the Black race. That is not a question. That is not hyperbole. That is her words and the reason why Planned Parenthood was created. Please look up eugenics if you're not familiar with that.
I'm sending a link across now.
Okay. So just so people know what we're talking about, but go on.
So Margaret Sanger was eugenicist that pushed for the eradication of Blacks. She also pushed for the eradication of other ethnicities, not just Blacks, but Black was her primary focus with Planned Parenthood. Essentially stating that abortions were, by promoting abortions in minority communities, Black communities, that they would be able to eventually eliminate the Black race from America.
Yeah.
So that goes along with Terror Destroyer's comment, and she continues with her comment saying, Hillary Clinton, quote, I admire Margaret Sanger enormously, her courage, her tenacity, her vision. I am really an author. There are a lot of lessons that we can learn from her in life. Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Like how to eradicate a race.
Yeah, they love to say that.
Martin Luther King, who gratefully received the Margaret Sanger Award from Planned Parenthood in 1966, said there's a striking kinship between our movement and Margaret Sanger's early efforts.
That I have never. I haven't seen that quote before.
No, I have never seen that quote either.
But I think so. That surprises me. But if it is true, and I know the Hillary Clinton quote is, it just goes to show people we don't know our own history, because that's a big deal.
Yep,
it is.
It was a Dr. Martin Luther King quote. It's exactly what he said.
Okay.
It's in the New York Times. He talks about it.
Wow. Okay. I had not seen that before.
I had to search.
Yeah.
And considering that how much of a eugenicist Margaret Sanger was, and how much animosity she held towards the black race, this really surprises me that Martin Luther King would say that.
Yeah.
But it also goes to show the marketing that has been put forth towards abortions, and how they are saying that it is a health care, is part of health care, is part of women's reproductive care. It is, the list goes on and on and on and on. And one thing that I always notice when they start in on these discussions, the first thing they do is they dehumanize the fetus.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, they classify it as a parasite, they classify it as a group of cells, that, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. Anything that they can do to keep from calling it a group of cells, that, et cetera.
Yeah, it's amazing to me that they have to make it about babies not being human beings.
Mm-hmm.
They have to, because the moment you think, and I think, let's go with something across the nation. Not only are they lying to people that women don't have rights because of the loss of Roe versus Wade, which is a lie, they also put out this lie that 70% of America believes and supports Roe versus Wade. That's not true. The truth is that if your only question is, do you believe women should be able to have abortions? Most people will say yes, with a caveat, with a condition on that. See, most people do not agree, and it is overwhelmingly the fact that most people in America do not believe in late-term abortion. In fact, most people tend to believe that the 15-week mark is correct. That roughly about 3-4 months, you can have an abortion up to 3-4 months. And then anything beyond that has special conditions on it, like rape, like incest, like death of the mother, not health of the mother. That's a key difference. Not health, but death of the mother. And when you take that out there, and you're seeing politicians who want to be pro murder of babies, otherwise known as abortion, they like to lump all that together and say, well, no, that's just everyone supports it. No, they don't. The conditions are important, because there is a difference between a baby without a heartbeat and a baby with a heartbeat. And by the Constitution, the government is there to protect those who cannot protect themselves. A baby with a heartbeat is a separate body from the mother. It is a separate American life. And if anything, by the Constitution, the government has a right and a duty to protect that child. So that's why this gets to be it's complicated in a way, but yet it's simple.
Well, it is. Okay. And even with those exceptions, the only time that abortion should really happen after the first trimester is when the life of the mother is in jeopardy. Then, yeah, okay, the mother is already established. There is no guarantee that the baby will survive. There's a lot of things. So after the first trimester, there really shouldn't be any cause, because at that time, you know that you're pregnant. If you were raped, you've had the ability to address that rape while you were in the first trimester.
Put that comment up.
If there's other complications, a lot of those are determined within the first trimester. There really is I'm hard pressed to find a lot of reasons after the first trimester where it's gone on so long that you couldn't have taken action already by the end of the first trimester.
I think Texas has a great compromise. If there's a heartbeat, that's a life, and by Constitution, that's a life that needs to be protected.
Mhm.
I think that's a fair.
I agree.
Because
I personally would prefer life always, but let's compromise. We're America. I think that's a compromise that the overwhelming majority of everyone would agree with and has agreed with for decades now.
That the heartbeat signifies life, even though 95% of biologists concur that human life begins at fertilization.
right.
Okay. I mean, that's a scientific consensus on when human life begins. And this comes across from people that are pro-choice or pro-abortion, pro-life,
Atheists.
conservatives, Democrats,
Well,
et cetera,
but
et cetera, et cetera.
remember though, we don't follow the science. We follow feelings, unless it's COVID, and they're told to follow the science.
Well,
That's more feelings than it is science, too.
I know.
and that's the problem. They always love to have their feelings, and that's what we're hearing. I mean, I mentioned it before, and I'll mention it again. Amy Klobuchar was talking about she's on the Senate hearing, in a Senate hearing, and she's talking about her feeling that it would feel like the rights would go back to the 1850s. That is a lie. That is an exaggeration. Feelings, we can't have feelings because everyone has a very different feeling about babies. So that's why we have law to make sure it's very clear. And that's why the Congress can't legislate this, because this is about individual states and individual human beings. The government, which is a big, huge, giant umbrella, doesn't have the right to go in and micromanage or place laws that micromanage individual lives.
It's very true. Okay. Essentially, James Madison pointed out in one of the federal papers, and I don't recall exactly which one, that the powers of the federal government are primarily external, and were not meant to be internal. There's essentially only one clause where the power of government is actually internal in the Constitution, and that is the Interstate Commerce Clause. With that exception, the rest of it, or I take that back, taxation is also internal. Okay, but with those exceptions, the powers designated by Section 8 of Article 1 are primarily external. And then people like to bring up the General Welfare Clause whenever they're trying to justify these actions and trying to justify Congress taking action on a power that they really don't have authority over. And one of the best ways to describe the General Welfare Clause is the domestic tranquility of the United States.
Mm-hmm.
Okay. So general welfare doesn't mean to provide for the welfare of everybody in the United States. It means to set an environment for domestic tranquility. In other words, to quit dividing us.
Mm-hmm.
One.
To allow people to succeed or fail on their own, give them an
Mhm.
even playing field, equal opportunity, not equal outcome. Big
Exactly.
difference.
Exactly. I mean, you have equality of opportunity, and then you have equality of outcome. And equality of outcome, by its very nature, is discriminatory.
Massively.
Okay, by its very nature, everyone.
But that's why the government isn't supposed to pick winners and losers. That's equality of outcome. And in the same way, the government shouldn't pick whether or not this baby should live and that baby should die. That's not their choice.
Exactly. And another way that they try to justify Congress taking action on this is they try to use the preamble. And first off, as we've discussed in here before, the preamble is a declaratory clause of the Constitution that essentially says what we, the people, are setting out to do by establishing this Constitution. It has no legal authority. It does not grant rights. It does not grant powers. The preamble actually does nothing other than declare the purpose of the Constitution. And they've tried to use, well, life, liberty, and the pursuit of happiness is why abortions need to be legal. On that premise, you are in violation of life, liberty, and pursuit of happiness of the unborn child.
Bingo.
However, you are not jeopardizing life, liberty, and pursuit of happiness of a pregnant mother. Okay? Because unless the pregnancy is actually detrimental to her life, i.e., going to cause her to die, you're not violating her right to life. If pregnancy does not diminish your liberties, pregnancy does not diminish your chance for the pursuit of happiness. So, by all measures, that argument fails.
Mm-hmm. By the way, much of what we're talking about right now is in the 98 pages of what Justice Alito actually said. And I recommend to people, if you haven't read it, please do read it. It is available. And in particular, I think page 5, third paragraph, bottom of the page, is the most important paragraph to read, because I actually did read what he said. And I think that's important for people to know, just in case. But let's continue.
So, they tried to do all these justifications. They've even tried to use the Fourth Amendment and privacy. Well, doctor patient privacy is violatable or allowed, is not guaranteed. There are many instances where doctor patient privilege is not applicable. Cases of abuse, cases of criminal activity, assault. If you go in and you have a gunshot wound, doctor patient privilege does not apply. I lost, when I had my accident, and lost consciousness. Because of my losing consciousness, my doctor-patient privilege was disbanded. Okay, because was potentially a threat to other people. So as a result, the doctor had to inform the state, DMV, that I lost consciousness while driving. Okay, where was my doctor-patient privilege on that? So doctor-patient privilege is not applicable even in this case. Okay, true. Healthcare decisions between a doctor and a patient, those should remain private. But we have to get real here. Abortion is not healthcare.
Not
Period.
even
No,
close.
no.
Yeah.
Frank, first of all, thanks for joining us. Glad you could come in. What's your take on this?
I was gonna say, I just wanted to. Sorry, I was a little bit late. I've been battling the kung flu all week, and in my attempt to try and rid myself of the Wuhan curse, I decided to go the unusual route and dismantle one of my vehicles and completely restore it,
Saw that.
rather than sit around in bed for
Mhm.
the duration of the week. And when I got done this evening at 8 o'clock and realized that we had a meeting tonight, I said, I better go get a couple of gallons of paint thinner and get all of this to solvent and everything else off of me. It took me a little while longer than I had anticipated. So I apologize for being late, but
we're glad to have you.
Absolutely.
I actually just came in from working in my yard about 15 minutes before I was going live.
yeah, it's this Wuhan. Yeah, this is the third time I've had it. Well, I believe I had it coming out of the very beginning of 2019 when it first got here. I believe I picked it up at SHOT Show because I was sick as death, when I first got it. Couple of months ago, Lori had it, and I was mildly symptomatic for a couple of days. I had a fever for all of 35 seconds. I never tested positive, but that's because she had us on some 60 pill a day regimen of vitamins, minerals, Flintstones chewables, every other damn thing else. This week, it just hit me out of the blue again. My whole company shut down. 5 out of 7 guys all came down with it at the exact same time. So we all got hit like a ton of bricks. So this week has left me with a little bit more time on my hands than I would normally have, and the whole debacle of the Supreme Court. I'm going to be honest with you. I don't care. I'm just going to put this out. I don't care. I'm going to take the libertarian point of view for this thing and say everybody's got whatever goes on in their life. We do things, we don't do things. People have got to deal with circumstances that other people don't have to. Sometimes you look back at life, your circumstances change, your points of view change, and everything else. In a perfect world, every baby should be born, every baby should be loved, every baby should have a home. It's not a perfect world. There's a lot of people that are going to resort to desperate measures regardless of what the law says. They're going to do what they're going to do regardless of what happens. And, the best we can do is just pray that at the end of this life cycle of ours, that the decisions we make put us in the good enough graces where we wind up with an eternal life other than, with its fire and brimstone. Now,
maybe I should have clarified my question. I was referring more or less to your opinion on Congress's ability to make a law of this to try to hold their power over the heads of the people and take control of this.
well, this is where I'm getting to.
Okay.
regardless of what the Supreme Court just said on Roe v. Wade, whether it was in 1972 or there was in 2022, Congress is going to change their points of view the same way that the public at large is going to change their point of view. You're always going to have a certain sway of what the public believes, what they want. Parsing out the right to life in the Constitution, I believe that a child has got every right to be born. I believe that every child has got a right to be born. I know that that's not going to happen, regardless what the law says. But I don't necessarily know if it's Congress's place to make any sort of judgment at the federal level. I think these have all got to be decided at certain state level. I'm going to take the Joe Biden point of view from 1981 and say that the Supreme Court should vacate the original verdict on Roe v. Wade, send it back to the states, and let the states decide for themselves through special referendum. And if by some chance one state decides no, another state decides yes, then I'm going to take the Ronald Reagan approach and say you vote with your feet. And you go to where the law applies to what your specific need is.
Or your specific beliefs.
Right.
But on top of that, but let's go a little further on this. The states that have either enacted or have legislation pending over abortions, anticipating Roe v. Wade being overturned, none of them have actually said that abortions are banned. They've set criteria to make it so that when a certain point in the pregnancy has been reached, you are no longer allowed to get an abortion with certain caveats.
Well, the point of it being is that, as far as I'm concerned, abortion should really be the last resort thing. That's really got to be the absolute last resort, because it's the most drastic measure that you can take as far as that pregnancy is concerned. It's the same way that suicide is the most drastic thing that you can do when it comes down to you being depressed. Mm-hmm. There are 1,000 different remedies. There's 1,000 different things. There's a lot that can be done before you make. There is no turning back from it. Once you go and commit that step, that's it. That's the last of it. It's not going to go any better than that. So, should there be criteria? Absolutely, there should be criteria. There should be 1,000 different options for that pregnant woman that doesn't want that child. There should be 1,000 options. And one of the things that we can do in this country to provide better options is to streamline the adoption system in this country. I know men and women my whole life that have spent tens and tens of thousands of dollars trying to adopt a child, going so far as having to adopt children from overseas because they can't get an adoption process here in the United States because either they can't afford it, or by the time it goes through, the kid is 27 years old. Mm-hmm. He's got to provide options in this country for those women that don't want those children. Now, Lori and I, we're both too old to think about having kids. Okay, we're both past the half-century mark. Neither one of us are going to be doing that. In the future, it would be nice if her and I decided that we had the free time, that we're still both young and active enough where we could potentially take on a kid. Bring a kid into the house. Raise a child. We both love to be able to do that. I don't feel like spending $100,000 in order to get that done. If there's a way that, like all of these different organizations that are pro-life, if they would band together and say, okay, let's dedicate X amount of resources to the care and welfare of these unwed children so that we can help streamline the process so it doesn't cost everybody an arm and a leg, that you're not going to Croatia or Indochina or anything else to go adopt a child. There's a lot of people in this country that would really love to have a kid. And if I think more mothers felt that abortion was not their only option, we would be able to facilitate a lot more of that.
Well,
And unfortunately, it's not the case right now.
Yeah.
Here's a problem. So you hit something there. Culturally, we went away from the idea of abortion being a last ditch effort or a last option. It's a replacement for contraception. We're seeing on TikTok, on Twitter, where there are feminists out there who are now saying, well, we're going to withhold sex and there's going to be a dearth of sex because we're no longer going to be able to have the ease of abortions. Well, that just exemplifies the fact that abortion, which was initially meant as a last effort, last action, has now become a common contraceptive action, which defeats the purpose of why they did it in the first place. We've taken a very different stance on this, again, which is why it's individual and why it needs to be on a state level, not a federal level, because the federal government can't react to the shifting moral viewpoints of individuals and in individual states. And I'd also bring up that the logic that we're seeing from the pro-abortion, pro-kill baby movement, especially the late-term abortion in New York and California, is that these are the same people who just spent 2.5 years, telling us that we don't have control of our own bodies. We must accept certain vaccine medications, and that we are required to have them. Otherwise, we can't work, we can't live, we're evil. But these very same people are turning around and telling us, well, the baby doesn't have a right, and that people have a choice to do whatever they want with their bodies. Again, this is why it can't be a federal level decision, because there's too many differences in the way people and states are looking at this, and you can't have a blanket opinion because it doesn't make sense.
Well, Hollywood has also done a bang-up job at glorifying abortion as well. They never go back and look at the aftermath. They never go back and look at the psychological trauma that a woman goes through 6 weeks, 6 months, 6 years after having the abortion, what that woman goes through mentally. What happens after the woman has had 1 abortion or 2 abortions, and then they finally settle down, they get married, and they have a couple of kids later on? They never go back and look back at the women psychologically and say, as they're looking at their 2 children what happens to the thought about the children that would have been? Nobody has really done an in-depth analysis to find out if there's any depression that's associated with it, any regret that's associated with it long term. And they've done such a bang-up job at trying to sell this that even putting it as an over-the-counter prescription, it's plan B. Well, plan A is the clinic. Plan B is the pill. Well, it's not a plan A. It's not a plan B. This is what happens when you have a lack of planning.
Well, exactly.
A lack of planning. And I think until people start getting back to the idea that individual responsibility is paramount, this really stems back. We go back and you look back at the Great Society, and you look back and you go back to FDR and how Michael, I don't want to speak for anybody who's not of my melanin, but look at what the government has done to the black family in this country. In 1935, 65% of black women were married and had their children. Now it's down to 17%. 17% of black women with children are married. It's 83% of black women that have children are unwed mothers.
Mm-hmm.
And there's something that said we took the family out of the equation, replaced the father with government, eliminated personal responsibility, and then gave everybody an easy outcome and used all of that outcome to justify the money that they spend to uphold these laws that on their face are murder.
Yeah.
Well, that exactly is, they have openly admitted that their ultimate goal, or one of, is to destroy the nuclear family. We've heard it over and over, that they don't care about family, and they need desperation. They need people to rely on the government to get what they want. Because if they can't get that, it's the same thing with open borders. They want open borders because they want to give them voterless ID voting, or IDless voting, excuse me. They need people to need them there, is what I'm trying to say. And they've admitted that they don't want people to be unified. They want chaos. They want people to be falling apart so they can step in. Big Daddy government can step in and save the day by stepping on everyone else's toes. And this has been going on for decades. And it's not that people are just now seeing it, we're just now saying something about it. It's they've done such a good job hiding it and hiding it from people that it's just become the norm for everyone now. It's ridiculous.
Well, even look at the strategic planning that has gone back from the days of Margaret Sanger. Margaret Sanger's greatest wish was to eliminate the black population in this country. She called them human weeds. She said that they were good for nothing but exterminating. This was her plan. And in following through with those plans, to this day, if you decided to call up Planned Parenthood and say, I would like to make a donation, but I would like my donation specifically to be used for the extermination of black fetuses, they will use that money specifically for that purpose. They make no qualms over it. If you don't like black people and you want to exterminate them, Planned Parenthood is happy to take your money and send it to one of their thousands of locations, which all happen to be located 85% in predominantly minority neighborhoods.
Yeah, I was getting ready to mention that.
But Frank, you mentioned earlier that this wasn't the plan. This was the final step, Plan A, Plan B. That was the plan all along. Is consequences be damned. I'll do what I want, and because I have the ability to do this, it doesn't matter what I do.
Well, common excuse that the pro-abortion group use is, well, contraception doesn't always work. Yet it does. If it's used properly, and if both partners are using contraception, then it is more than 99.99999% effective.
And when you turn around and you flip that argument the opposite way, and you say, well, guess what? Abortions don't always work either. They look at you like you blew in the face, and you say, wait a second, why do we have to have laws that are drafted in all of these states about the second try law? For the children that failed, that were a result of a failed abortion, rather than leaving them on a dying table, that they have to administer first aid and try to save that infant.
Mm-hmm.
Abortions are not exactly 100%, either. We still don't ever get numbers back from Planned Parenthood as far as how many women don't make it out of their clinics alive because of complications that arose from the procedure being done incorrectly. We'll never get those numbers.
Yeah.
And if it's medical care, why doesn't your OBGYN perform them in his office?
Well, one of the things, Mike, you just mentioned something interesting, because you're right, Frank, but I also want to go to something else, that self-responsibility. Okay, you say, oh, contraception doesn't work all the time. Well, then you should be taking that into account before you have sex, protected or unprotected. This isn't something we've turned it into something so casual, which is why abortion is considered so casual as well. There's no thought about it. There's no relationship. It's like, and I just shared a link about BLM. This is part of that idea, from a progressive idea that says, well, there should be no nuclear family. There should be no marriages. They want to destroy all that. Well, these are important things. And if they weren't important, guess what? Human beings have been around, 20,000 years, 200,000 years, whatever you want to count. We've gone through families. We've gone through marriages where it's important about when you're having sex, to be able to procreate. That is the whole point of it. we need to remember this is important. It is a serious action. It has serious consequences, and they are completely on you, the individual, not the federal government. You're not having sex with the federal government. You're having sex with an individual. These are your personal choices. Yet again, another reason why the federal government should not be involved. This is an interaction between individuals that have made individual choices. The government has no right to be in there.
Well, the government is, we might not be having sex with them, but they're figuring out how to screw us anyway.
Well,
You
that's
said
another
it.
thing.
You said it. I was going to say sex
I
with
was,
the federal.
I had to go for the easy pick that apple.
I was going to say
Now-
sex with the federal government's called taxes, and they're on the receiving end.
Now, did you guys happen to touch base on the leak of the report yet? And
Yeah, that's where we started.
Some
With.
We have talked about it briefly, but we do need to spend some more time on it.
Real quick, unofficial numbers. On average, 68,000 women die a year due to complications from abortions, leaving it as one of the highest causes of maternal mortality. So one of the highest causes of a death of a pregnant woman.
It's one of the biggest death rates in America. It's got to be in the top 20.
And
I'm trying to get more information, but again, unofficial numbers. But I found 3 places so far that cite that.
well, how many women actually died during childbirth? Because that seems to be one of the
fair question. I'll look into that while we continue on the next subject. I'm going to mute myself.
Because while they talk about the abortion was necessary to save the life of the mother because the mother would die during childbirth. Well, if there's more women dying from the abortion than dying during childbirth, then you've created more of a problem that you said you found the solution for.
That'll be interesting to find out. But
sounds like COVID vaccine.
Well,
yeah, well, all right. Now,
the speculation before.
Wait, okay. From the CDC, about 700 women a year die from complications from childbirth.
All right, so
770,000.
So 900% increase in the number of mortalities based on the result of an abortion than actually going through with
almost 1,000% increased. Yeah.
And that, all right, now let's also consider that 67,000 women that die.
Mm-hmm.
But that's not the number. There's also 67,000 fetuses that die too.
Mm-hmm.
So during that, so now you've got 134,000 deaths out of the 700 women that die a year giving birth. How many of the children survive?
Well, even if you go with 100%, that would be 1,400 versus 134,000.
Right. Well, there might be cases where both the mother and the child die during childbirth. We know that happens. You know, but if 700 women pass, I'm sure that a good majority of the children born are okay at that point.
Yeah, but the magnitude of difference is just it's astronomical,
right. So,
exponential.
So every abortion that results in the death of a woman also results in the death of one or more fetuses.
Mm-hmm.
Because I'm sure there's plenty of them that are probably twins. Maybe triplets. Who knows? Who knows how many have got there?
It's a ridiculous number. But
all right. Well, listen, I'm gonna break from that because that's really depressing, and I'm tired, and I have been waiting 2 years.
I
have been waiting 2 years now for my Evolve platform 9mm pistol caliber carbine to arrive. 2 years.
Let's take a fun break. Let's see it.
It arrived Monday. I had to go pick it up in a respirator so as not to contaminate the entirety of the gun store. I have been so eagerly waiting to get this because I just can't wait to shoot the damn thing that I now have it in my possession for 84 hours, and I have not fired it yet.
That's got to be driving you nuts. Yeah.
Because I can't get to the range. I don't want to go to the range and get anybody sick because I'm still somewhat transmissible. So I'm sitting here and I'm looking and I get this this beautiful thing and I can't do anything with it. So
Jesus, show us.
Mail it to
without
me, I'll
any
do it.
further ado, I will show you first my 5150 cleaning rag.
Is that your new snot rag?
That comes with. No, I'm not going to use this as a snot rag. This is the official. This is what you wrap your bolt carrier group up as you oil it up and take it ready for assembly. Okay, here she is in all her illustrious golden glory.
Oh, that's very nice.
Beautiful. Wait, does that mean the Liberty First Foundation has 2 official Liberty First Foundation guns?
Right. Yeah.
Yes, it's got
Beautiful.
that.
Etched directly into the metal, and this is a little tight yet.
Oh, nice.
Love it.
Nice. Right in the bolt
Right
carrier.
on my charging handle. And on top of it is an Athlon Optics red dot. That came courtesy of Athlon Optics, so that when we do the 1,000-round review with this thing, they were nice enough to send that along. It has a Elfman Tactical 3.5-pound competition trigger in it. It has a Jeremy, you know the what's that really, really good coating they put on the bolt carrier groups?
Anodized?
No, better than that.
Both of mine are anodized. I'm not sure. I'm sorry.
It's a PVA or something like that. I forgot.
Okay, I've heard the term. Yeah.
Yeah, the bolt carrier group is Iron City Gunworks.
Nice.
Well, bolt carrier group. It's the toughest, most indestructible bolt carrier group. Weighted buffer tube, hydraulic weighted buffer tube in it. Full Arca rail on the bottom, so you could mount this onto just about any kind of.
Love that handguard.
Isn't that slick?
It is.
Yeah, M-Lock, QD ports all over this thing. One of the only few 9mm pistol caliber carbines that has a lock open on the last shot, which is really impressive. Custom flash hider in a 4-post design. This thing will throw fireball in 4 different directions. Of course, it's got the nice tactical adjustable stock. But what makes this even more amazing, it takes Glock mags.
No.
Which I happen to have 35 of now. But what makes this even more amazing than anything else is the fact that there are no takedown pins in this gun.
I noticed that.
Yeah.
Yes. Oh, it also has an Elfman Tactical cross bolt safety. So it's a one-touch safety on there. No selector necessary. You just have the one there. And what you have here is a custom cammed operation. Now, it's still very tight and it's still very new, but I want you to watch this magic trick, Jeremy. You'll appreciate this, okay? I rotate that out of the way. Open it up. Watch this.
Shut up. That's cool as shit.
Oh, that's cool.
I'm jealous.
Check this out. Now, I take this, I put that away, I grab a hold of my 45 upper, and I put my 45 upper on it. I don't want to run that. Take that out. I could take this off, put my 10mm on it. Take that out. Don't need it. If this is the AR-15 configuration, and I want to run from 223 to 300 blackout, one cam. Boop. I pop it. 3 seconds is all it takes to swap the uppers on it. This thing weighs nothing. Okay, they have taken out every single ounce of weight that they could take out of this thing because they compensated for it with extra super heavy duty bull barrels on these things.
Yeah, well,
Nice.
that's it.
All right,
9mm is the official chamber of the Liberty First Foundation.
Well, yeah, watch. Now that hooks on. Close it. Lock the cam.
Mm-hmm.
Listen.
Oh, it's
Very
solid.
quiet.
There is no rattle. The AR rattle is completely and totally done away with.
Nice.
You don't need the wedges. You don't need anything. The tighter you make, the tighter you push up on the cam, the tighter it locks up. And this cam design is, you can swap this down from a 2-pound release up to a 15-pound release.
Okay.
So depending upon how much tension you want to have in this rotation right there, and you'll notice that that rotation is happening all by itself. That's because it's ambidextrous. Now, right here is a little button. That's the positive lock. When you rotate the cam up, it clicks on to it right there, so it can never come off unintentionally. You have to physically locate that down, and once you're done, boom. That's you taking your upper right off your lower right there. Nice. And then, and it's also nicely with the
etching. Nice etching.
And my own custom serial number happens to be my birthday, except the guys over there kind of screwed up a little bit. You see David Moore, who is their genius machinist, who lovingly crafts every one of these components by hand. ATF wouldn't give them the ability to put L1F as my serial number. Yeah, I know ATF. Boo, ATF.
Yeah. ATF should be a convenience store, not a government organization.
So they asked what my birthday was. They were going to make my birthday my serial number. So I said 416. Put 416 down. Unfortunately, David is dyslexic. So I now have serial number 419. But that's all right. It still has our official logo. And that's not just etched into the Cerakote. That's machined into the lower. So even if I decided to change colors on this thing, all of that information is still on there. That's cool. And even in the charging handle, it's etched into the charging handle itself.
That's cool.
So put my magic trigger, boom, 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 ready to go. No rattle.
While we're on our fun time break, Vass, have you seen the L1F Smith & Wesson?
No, I have not.
All right. Frank's might not going to be as cool as yours, but I'll be back in a second.
But another thing, the Athlon Optics red dot that they provided for us on this thing will hold 0 and hold it red dot at the same brightness, at the same medium brightness for 50,000 hours on one button cell.
Nice.
One button cell. Easy to change right up on the top turret. It's a 2032, so it's very convenient, very easy to locate. Has an auto on, auto off. So if you have this sitting in your closet or under your bed or whatever the case is, somebody breaks in, the red dot's off. As soon as the gun senses movement, red dot comes right up. And it comes up to the illumination that you last set it at.
Jake Awake is beautiful.
So man, it's a sweet thing. This is Gen 1. I already have a couple of Gen 2 and Gen 3 features already added into this thing. This one is more or less a prototype than it is the first production run. This is the first gun to make it out into a consumer's hand. And for anybody that's interested, this gun was not free. They did not. I was offered the gun for free, but I plan on beating the living snot out of this thing. I plan on running it through the paces. And the first thing that we're going to be doing is running a couple of 100 rounds through it for a break-in period, zero it in. We want to check mag functionality for different magazine compatibility and everything else like that. But then we're going to run 1,000 round test with it. We're going to run 1,000 rounds in 15 minutes through this thing. We're going to have multiple shooters, 6 different cameras, thermal camera, the whole 9 yards. We want to see exactly if this thing is going to live up to its name or what. And because we're going to run that test, I wanted to own the rifle because I didn't want anybody to be able to say that we were shilling for the company. Now, look, truth be known, Keith Berry, Danielle Berry, David Moore, these are friends of mine. I love these people like family. I love them to death. I want to see this gun company become bigger than Smith & Wesson. I want to see this company succeed. If this gun sucks, they're going to know about it, and so are you.
Mm-hmm.
But if it sucks, they're not just going to say, well, deal with it. They're gonna make it right.
They're going to fix it.
They'll redesign it and they'll do it right. But I just want to let you know, it sucks. They're not going to. The hell was that?
It was weird. Mine did the same thing.
Oh.
I was trying to check and see which one it was.
Oh, okay. But
computer. Sorry.
But yeah, this is my gun. It's not a freebie. So, like I said, they're not paying me for a review. This review is costing me more money than I can tell you what it's going to cost me.
Fair.
But just fit and finish alone, I know I'm going to recommend them. Just if one shot goes off, it's done its job for me. So
yeah.
But all right, now I'm putting this thing. God, man, I was messing with the Smith & Wesson 1522 before, and it's all plastic. And I was like, wow, this thing doesn't weigh anything. Oh, and I grabbed this, and I'm like, God damn. I forget what an all metal rifle feels like.
Oh, wait till you put the 30 round mag in it.
Yeah, well.
All right, my turn to show off. Sorry, Frank, I had to steal your thunder. So, this is the official pistol of the Liberty First Foundation. Can't hold it. So, chamber's clear. No bullets in there. No way to hurt Jeremy. Smith & Wesson M&P Shield Plus. Liberty First Foundation information there. 1776 down the back of the grip. LFF on the top of the slide, the 13 stars etched in the back of the slide, and then that's same thing on the other grip, and then 1776 on the slide as well. So yeah, it's official. The 9mm is the official chamber of the Liberty First Foundation.
Very sweet. By the way, you just as a disclaimer, because I know there are crazy people in the world. 1776 is our national history. It doesn't mean anything else. It's our national history. Because there are people out there who think it's something twisted.
Yeah.
MTG just went through that.
And just to let you know, if you do order a gun from 5150 Rifles, you'll get this beautiful custom-built hard case with whatever you want laser etched into the hard case. So we've got the 5150 logo along with the Liberty First Foundation right there. And then when I flip this around, I have all my personal information. So if this should ever find its way onto an aircraft, that can get scanned, returned to me. All my pertinent information is on there, so they know who owns the gun, who's going to compete with it, and who spent more money than they should have.
I'm jealous.
That is nice.
But that gives me an idea to get my case engraved. Okay, back to the topic at hand. That was a nice break, though, from the topic we were talking about, I got to admit.
Well, it's a heavy subject, so.
It is. And now that we've showed off our toys.
All right. Who's got the biggest coffee cup? I think it's me.
I don't have a coffee cup. I've just got vodka and orange juice.
Okay,
My typical.
Oh, sorry. I just had to. I just realized that my big giant coffee cup was sitting there because I was looking for my Archie Bunker coffee cup, and it's not here.
Yeah.
Go figure.
Well,
Happens.
yeah. You know, I'm telling you, it's terrifying to me that there are people right now who just saw the firearms and they're terrified. They saw 1776. They're terrified. Those are the same people who are telling us that the federal government should micromanage our lives, that we should have the federal government telling us what we can and can't do, that I shouldn't be on this screen with you guys because I don't know. They have these crazy ideas, these feelings, and we are all subject to their feelings, and we don't have any choices. We don't have any rights. On The View today, they were just saying that I think the woman's name is Sunny, and she's saying she can't understand Black Republicans and Black and Latino Republicans. They just don't make any sense. And I'm like, since when did we get into this idea that I don't get to be able to make a choice as an American citizen? And again, this brings us back to the subject at hand. We're individuals. We have responsibility for our lives. We get to make choices. We don't need the government to tell us what's disinformation. That's on us. Just like you were doing, Jeremy. Someone made a comment, brought up a quote. We didn't know what it was. We searched. We found out. We did our due diligence. We didn't request that the government come up and tell us, gee, government, Cuomo, Kathy Hochul, will one of you guys tell me what it means?
No, it wasn't that long ago that the same crowd was complaining about the last administration and what they were doing.
But wait, who was paying attention last week? By a show of a very disgusted hands here, who remembers David Hogg, the liberal poster boy for the school shooting, Parkland, right? The school shooting, and yes, Frank. Well, David Hogg recently tried to start a business and said it is absolutely ridiculous that it is so hard to start a small business and the government shouldn't be able to make it so hard. What? What did you just say? Welcome to what side of the argument? I'm sorry, welcome David Hogg. Yeah. Holy shit. David Hogg said that the government shouldn't have the power that they do. When he said that, I about fell out of my chair.
It's always the thing I've noticed. Like I had a protest that I did this week. SUNY Broom. I talked about it on this program before because I disagree with CRT. And the thing I noticed is, and I finally figured it out, there's faculty at SUNY Broom, a state college of New York, that sent police after me to try and silence me. It's the same thing that we're seeing here with people who are saying, well, you can't be pro-life. Their feelings are in the way, and they expect that we're going to react like they would. Because what was the reaction right after we heard about this leak, which was planned, I have to tell you, because in Washington, D.C., Monday night at midnight, suddenly 200 teenagers, young college students, suddenly just miraculously showed up in front of the Supreme Court. No, that was planned. They didn't just happen to be strolling down the street. But they're expecting us to protest like they do. They expect us to destroy cities like they did in Minneapolis, like they did just this week in LA and across this nation. They expect us to destroy property and attack people because that's what they would do when someone offends their feelings. But we shouldn't be legislating based on people's feelings and their fear that someone's going to lose their mind and not be responsible and not have enough self-control to hold themselves back and just say, I don't agree. And you know what? My state can make a different law. Instead, they say the government has to use the fear and power and step on our rights and us as individuals and control our lives. That's not democracy, not representative government. That is an autocracy. That is a dictatorship.
Well, 100%. And the reason being is this is equally as powerful, if not more, than this. We need you have to get out if you've got a problem, and I know that obviously everyone in this room does it, but you can't just go on and complain about things. You got to get up and do something about it. And this is not the right answer. Destroying your city is not the right answer. This one is.
Yeah. But
Well,
yeah, go ahead.
let's go back to October 6th, 2018.
Okay.
Okay, and I'm going to bring this up here.
I'm sorry, I've slept since then.
Okay.
I'm gonna go put the Liberty First pistol away. I'll be right back.
Okay.
So I'm going to go ahead and share my screen.
You're getting better at this, Mike.
I am.
Hey, hold on. Let me share my screen.
Okay, this is from MSNBC.
Oh, God.
Okay.
Yeah.
This is October 6th, 2018. Now, it's kind of interesting that this is the 6th. And we have huge protests about, or a huge kangaroo court on January 6th. Now, hopefully this will load up here shortly. But essentially, on October 6th, 2018, protesters protesting Kavanaugh stormed the Supreme Court.
And we're beating down the doors.
Exactly.
Mm-hmm. I remember
But
that.
yet we don't hear about any investigations or any tribunals or any commissions over that. And I don't know why this is not loading.
Because it's NBC and they don't like us.
Mm-hmm.
But you're right. And for people to go back in time, we saw during the Kavanaugh and during Amy Coney Barrett, we saw a lot of these people coming out, and they were, again, it's always about violence. It's always about using force to change people's lives, whether they like it or not, because a very small group of elitists are making a decision. And that's not how legislation is supposed to be done, not at a federal level, not at a state or local level. If your argument cannot win, then you don't have the right of way. You know, when they say the Commerce Clause allows for abortions, that doesn't make sense. When they say that it's about privacy, that doesn't make sense. When we try and look at the 14th Amendment, it doesn't make sense. Their arguments do not hold up, which is why they keep conflating it with other things that are absolute imaginary nightmares that they have that do not apply. And they want us to be wrapped up in emotion so that we don't stop and think about what they're actually saying. And that's the most important thing that people have to do. Take away the emotion and actually look at what's going on with your rights and this nation, and then make the decision. They don't want that.
Well, during that same protest, a very prominent senator, in fact, he is the Senate majority leader,
Chuck Schumer,
this current term, Senator Chuck Schumer, literally threatened Kavanaugh, Alito, and several other Supreme Court justices during that same protest.
Yeah, he said that if you do this, if we allow
And actually,
Kavanaugh,
let's get our terms right. It wasn't a protest, it was a riot.
yes, it was a riot, and he went up there and he inflamed the crowd, saying that if Kavanaugh was confirmed and became a Supreme Court justice, that Republicans would rue the day and that they would take action so that we would always remember it. And today, 2 days ago, we saw that these very same ultra left organizations were staking out and stalking members of the Supreme Court at their homes. They were doxxed. Which is a crime, and they doxed them, and they had these people at their homes intimidating our Supreme Court. When I say this is destroying our nation, this leak has destroyed a part of our government. Not only have they politicized the Supreme Court, but now we're seeing intimidation tactics being used against these Supreme Court justices to try and get an emotional reaction or resolution. And that isn't about liberty. That's not about freedom. And think about the consequences of that going down the line, whether it's Second Amendment rights, First Amendment rights, any right you want to think of. If the rule of law today is, oh, but we can just go out and intimidate our Supreme Court justices. We can just go out and lie about the facts and get people emotionally riled up and change the law. Then you don't have any rights anymore. You don't have freedom. That's what this is all about. Ultimately, this is about whether we're going to have any freedoms, because if this is the way we go forward from this point, then there's no freedom you have that is guaranteed anymore.
Well, it's kind of funny. Okay, January 6th Commission is currently hot on the heels of Marjorie Taylor Greene because of some supposed texts that she had on January 6th. You've got other investigations into other senators and congressmen that were supposedly involved with January 6th. However, we still have yet to see an investigation into Schumer and his comments on October 6th, 2018. Very similar circumstances. The only difference is on January 6th, the rioters were able to breach the Capitol.
Allowed.
And I do believe that that was staged and they were allowed in.
They were allowed in. I saw it.
Okay.
Yeah, you were there.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
And the Supreme Court, they weren't actually able to breach the facility, but it was still essentially the same type of situation. It was an assault on our government.
If we're looking at it from that point of view, I don't think either of them were assaults on our government, although they're
assaults on pillars of our government.
Yeah, that's which is a different thing. So is speaking up.
Mm-hmm.
If they're criminalizing actions they don't like. They're trying to silence any opposition. And they're trying to use this excuse like, okay, well, Congress is going to come out and make it a law. They can't. I took a note. You know why we can't get a national law about abortion? Besides the fact that 26 states don't agree, is that you're denying the right to life. And we can't pass a law that says, oh, we're going to, without a crime, without a trial, without any kind of defense, we're going to go after innocents and kill them. You can't make that. That's not a law. And there is no law.
Specifically a violation of the Fifth Amendment.
Well, right, and the same people that are protecting this are just saying, like we said earlier, they're dehumanizing a fetus and saying that it's not a life, it's this, it's that, it's the other, and these are the same people that they want to take away other protections of ourselves, but they're not in it for protection. They're in it for themselves,
You know,
for their convenience.
Well, that's it.
I got a pretty good argument for something I came up with a long time ago.
Sure.
For when life begins. And I was thinking about it. And I says, what is water? Does anybody know the chemical composition of water?
H2O.
H2O.
All right. What's the chemical composition for ice?
H2O.
H2O.
What's the chemical composition for steam?
H2O.
H2O.
It's all the same, yeah.
Okay. Water comes in many forms. Liquid, gaseous, could be boiling, could be frozen. The colder you make it, the harder it gets. No matter what you do to water, you cannot change its chemical composition. Even if you dilute water with something else, it's still water. It just contains something.
Mm-hmm.
That whatever it is that the water contains, if you boil the water comes out as water and evaporates and condenses back into water.
Well,
Water,
single molecule of H2O.
Water is always water.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, even a single molecule.
Right.
Okay, whether it's
It's
single
not-
molecule or it's 25 million gallons, it's water.
It's water. All right. The only time water ceases to be water is when you put an electric current to it and you can separate the molecules, separate the atoms back into its base components of hydrogen and oxygen.
Mm-hmm.
What makes water water is that electric, that spark that brings those hydrogen and oxygen models together. No matter what you do, it's always water.
So
Life is exactly
I'm going
the
to share
same
something
thing.
from Princeton.
You can have, let me finish my point, Michael.
Mm-hmm.
You can have the sperm and the egg. Both have their unique principles, their unique properties, and everything else. It's not until you bring them together and that little spark, that spark of electric that combines them and turns them into something completely and totally new, completely and totally different. You cannot differentiate when life begins from anywhere else but that initial spark. The same spark that turns hydrogen and oxygen into water is what turns sperm and egg into life. It's the same spark that when water and soil hits a seed and it germinates and it sprouts. It's from that beginning. It's not from that first breath. It's not from the heartbeat. It's from the spark that life is created at is at that instant. That is it. That is the scientific principle that if we found some sort of germ on Mercury that was the size of an atom, that would be considered life on other planets. Why is it not considered life here?
Right. Scientifically, science says life starts at human life starts at fertilization. Okay, human development begins at, this is from Princeton.edu. Human development begins after the union of male and female gametes or germ cells during process known as fertilization conception. Development of embryos begins at stage 1 when sperm fertilizes an oocyte, and together they form a zygote. Embryo development of organization from the time of fertilization until significant differentiation has occurred when an organism becomes known as fetus. Okay, all the way throughout here, you find where they say that human life starts at fertilization. Other references. Okay, this is a paper by S.A. Jacobs, and he did a study on scientists or specifically biologists to determine when they believe life starts. And in this, participants were separated in 60 groups, and each statement was affirmed by a consensus of each group, including biologists that identify as very pro-choice, 69 to 90%, very pro-life, 92 to 97%, very liberal, 70 to 91%, very conservative, 94 to 96%, strong Democrats, 74 to 91%, strong Republicans, 89 to 94. Overall, 95% of all biologists affirmed the biological view that a human's life begins at fertilization. 5,212 out of 5,502 biologists confirm that life begins at fertilization.
And yet we still have so many people thinking that the leaker is a hero, that this is the overturn of Roe versus Wade is impossible. I want to address something. Do you notice that we've heard from Schumer, Pelosi, so many on the left, these Democrats have said, but it's precedent. You can't change precedent.
Good.
Well, I'm going to.
Yeah, but I want to say, but remember, these are the same people who are telling us that Citizens United is precedent, but they want to change it.
Mhm.
These are the same people who are telling us that what was it that just passed? The Second Amendment is precedent, but they want to change that.
Mhm.
We have so many laws that are already precedent that they want to change.
Yeah,
but
they
yet-
call DCV Heller
Heller.
a
That's
flawed
what I'm thinking of.
decision.
Yeah.
Okay,
Precedent
so
for
I'm
15
going
years.
to show you another thing. This is from the United States Congress. Okay, Constitution annotated. These are Supreme Court cases that have been overruled since 1798 or overturned.
Yeah. But yet, we can't change precedent. Come on.
Okay. Now, there's one real case that we need to really kind of address in this is the Dred Scott case.
Well, yeah, that's one of the big ones.
Okay. Michael, if Dred Scott would not have been overturned, you would still be property.
I know.
Say it. Okay. I mean, Supreme Court cases get overturned because, again, the Supreme Court are human. They make mistakes. They are driven by different political ideologies. Okay. Whether that be liberal, conservative, Democrat, Republican, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera, whatever political ideology there is. That's one of the reasons why we have a mixture on the court.
Yeah.
So they do have various ideologies that they contend with. But at the same time, they also do make mistakes. And that hence why we have so many Supreme Court cases that have been overturned on more recent rulings.
Brown versus Board of Education.
Of the Constitution, even though the Constitution's pretty pretty self-explanatory. I mean, honestly, there's a bunch of different reasons why a case may be ruled one way and then ruled differently
because
at another
lawyers
time.
ask questions like, well, it depends on what the definition of is.
Right.
Yeah.
That's very true.
You know,
And the
it's-
ever-changing definition.
well, listen, guys, I'm going to jump out of here for now. I'm going to leave you guys to continue on this robust debate. I'm going to go and take my medication and go to sleep because yeah, it's funny with this Wuhan thing. I'm up every morning at 4:00. I don't know what the hell's going on. I think I'm on Beijing time or something.
Mhm.
But
You have a good night.
Strange.
Get better, Frank.
be safe. I'll talk to you guys in a couple of days. Have a good night. And as always, you know,
Stay safe, you straight.
yeah, that's the one. All right, guys. Love you. Take care.
Love you.
Have a
Good
good night,
night.
Frank.
Love it. You know, you ever notice here's something that I know a lot of people don't know. Looking at the ideology, now I think it's understood fact, and there are plenty of polls that have proven this over decades. America is slightly center right. That's
Mhm.
a fact. Okay. Do you know where the Supreme Court has lined up consistently since 1935?
They're more center left.
No. In fact, and there are charts on this. You can even look it up. It's on Wikipedia. You can find it there. There's a couple of studies that have done this. Since 1935, the Supreme Court, including today, lines up exactly with the rest of America. It is slightly center right. The only time that the Supreme Court wasn't slightly center right, 1960 to 1970. That is the only time that the Supreme Court overall was liberal. And that was out of line with the rest of America. Only time.
Mhm.
But the media wants us to think that the Supreme Court has always been and should always be liberal. It isn't. It never has been. And neither has America. Even today, America isn't progressive. It isn't democratic, or democratic meaning left leaning. It's center right.
Right.
But they want to change our impression of our nation so that they can take away our rights and to impose a government cradle to grave micromanaging of our lives. People should be terrified of that.
Well, and absolutely, they should be. And the thing is that I find really interesting is I don't care what side of the aisle people are. It's really funny how they want the government to tell everybody what to do as long as it aligns with their beliefs. And the
Mhm.
second government starts telling them what to do, and it's not in line with their beliefs, then all of a sudden now government should stay out of it.
Mhm.
Okay,
Well,
I find that very, very interesting. And it happens, like I said, it happens on both sides, very predominantly.
Well, we just talked about that same thing, exactly that with the whole David Hogg thing. He
Mhm.
wants the government to control guns down to the letter, but doesn't think they should have any control over private business.
Right, right, exactly. It's and that's the whole premise behind the Constitution, was to keep government in check, regardless of who was in power at the time, who was in office at the time. Okay, regardless whether it's Democrat or Republican, regardless whether it's libertarian, regardless whether they're liberal, conservative, regardless whether they're progressive, the whole premise behind the Constitution was to protect everybody, regardless of who was in office at the time. And primarily, the Constitution is there to prevent tyranny of majority. Okay, that is the whole premise, really, behind the Constitution, was to prevent a tyranny of the majority.
Well, this is a tyranny of the majority. I mean, look at this. The leaker is being considered a hero. And meanwhile, they may have, and it seems to be, they violated 18 USC 641. People can look it up for themselves. It's the same piece of law that Julian Assange, that Chelsea Manning, that Edward Snowden have been charged with. The same situation. Government property released. This is illegal. It's a crime. But now we're seeing, oh no, this person is a hero because they broke the law, and this is hurting our nation. But because certain political elites like it, well, then it's okay. And meanwhile, they're taking away our rights and our freedoms. And I think that's getting lost, because at the end of the day, this is all about, I'll go back to Senator Amy Klobuchar on the Senate hearings saying directly, this is about elections. We've heard so many of them say, well, this is about elections. This is going to affect our election. No, this is about our rights. It's not about an election. And that's the thing we have to keep remembering. This is about our rights. Yeah, and the penalty's 10 years in jail, which I hope this person gets thrown in jail for 10 years.
Okay, so here's the code, 18 USC 641, public money, property, or records. And it talks about embezzlement, stealing, purloins, knowingly converts to his or her use, or the use of another without authority, sells, conveys, or disposes of any record, voucher, money, or thing of value of the United States, or any department or agency thereof, or property made or being made under contract for the United States, or any department or agency thereof. Whoever receives, conceals, or retains the same with the intent to convert it to his use or gain, knowing it to have been embezzled, stolen, purloined, or converted, shall be fined under this title or imprisoned not more than 10 years. Fined under this title or imprisoned not more than 10 years or both. But if the value of such property in the aggregate, combining amounts from all the counts for which the defendant is convicted in a single case, does not exceed the sum of 1,000, he shall be fined under this title or imprisoned for not more than 1 year or both.
No, this is more than $1,000.
Exactly.
Advertising, it's more than $1,000. We're talking about 10,000. This is a crime, and this person not only should be disbarred, removed from the Supreme Court, but they should be in jail for 10 years. And whichever justice that person works for, which I believe would be connected to Ketanji Brown Jackson, Justice Jackson, they should be removed from the Supreme Court as well for a violation of the public trust. Mm-hmm. And I think it's Ketanji Brown Jackson, not because she's a woman, not because she's black, which some people like to make the allusion to. It's because she's an activist. All these other judges have already been there for years. They've gone through massively important cases that
massively controversial cases.
Absolutely. Not a single link ever in the history of the Supreme Court. But we get one activist judge put in place, and immediately afterwards, suddenly we have a leak.
Right.
I think that says a lot.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, the timing is very telling.
Absolutely. And yet I have yet to hear a single argument that makes sense. Because they say, well, if they can make Roe v. Wade be overturned, well, then gay marriage is going to go. Well, first of all, gay marriage doesn't involve anyone's life or death.
Mm-mm.
Second of all, it's not even close. There's no connection between those two pieces of legislation. They're trying to
They're trying to literally terrorize people that if this happens, it's a slippery slope, and you're going to start losing privacy rights. You're going to start losing marriage equality. I mean, just goes on and on and on and on. Okay, there's going to be women's rights issues. There's going to be, I mean, you name it. I mean, I've heard the gambit.
and it even makes sense.
Right. None of it does. Absolutely zero make any sense.
Right. No, absolutely.
But yet they are fear mongering in order to create the emotion that they need to try to sway our courts
You know what's the problem here?
and public opinion.
You know what's the problem here? If they get away with this, if we see that the Supreme Court is swayed and Roe v. Wade isn't overturned, if we see that they succeed in using these, that they politicize the Supreme Court, and the Supreme Court becomes a point of activism instead of the Constitution, you know what comes next? They're going to take away our right to free speech, because we're already seeing that with the Disinformation Governance Board, the Ministry of Truth. They're going to come and take away our right to Second Amendment to defend ourselves, which the Ninth Circuit Court already decided, said you don't have a right to protect yourself outside your home. That was Young versus Hawaii. People can look that up. They're going to be coming after all these other rights, and they're going to use the same exact tactics. Let's go to their homes. Let's threaten their families. Let's go out onto social media. Let's demonize everyone who disagrees with us with made-up stories and allusions to losses of rights that don't exist, as we take away rights and impose a government will that is more akin to China than it is to America. Or am I wrong?
Exactly. And I mean, we've already got a government that is grossly exceeding its authority, and in so many areas that you can't even count the number of egregious constitutional violations there are, essentially on a daily basis. I mean, we've got laws that are being continuously passed. We've got laws that are being where Congress is financing, well, student loan forgiveness, for one. Okay. First off, Congress does not have the authority, or the federal government does not have the authority to, first off, guarantee loans, let alone to provide loans for education. They have no authority for that. And again, people will try to cite the General Welfare Clause as their justification, or the Commerce Clause as their justification.
They try to cite that for everything, though.
Well, they do. Okay. And it's a gross misunderstanding of the General Welfare Clause. It's a gross misunderstanding of the Commerce Clause.
General welfare is we'll protect ourselves from enemies, foreign and domestic, not what color shoe should I wear this week. You know, they really take it to some serious extremes, and they use whatever they feel like to cover it up with, and they have
General
no
Welfare
regard
Clause,
for what we want or for what.
If you actually read the General Welfare Clause, the General Welfare Clause is for purposes of taxation. Okay, on the circle, that's the whole point of it, is the authority of Congress to enact taxes for the general welfare of the United States in order to enact the powers, or in order to wield the powers that are further listed within Section 8 of Article 1. Okay. The necessary and proper clause is another one that many people completely misinterpret.
Mhm.
And the necessary and proper is specifically stated for legislation to enact the powers herein designated in this Constitution. Okay,
Well,
I'm
necessary
paraphrasing
and proper again is wide.
all this, but this gross misunderstanding and this taken out of context, these terms and how they were put forth by the framers is wrong. And it's an usurpation of power by our representatives, the ones that literally put into office to protect our rights.
Mhm.
You know,
So I
go
want
ahead.
to. Okay. So a friend of mine, I won't name names, has chimed in on a private message and said, I think we kind of covered this earlier, and I wish I could post this on the channel. If Roe v. Wade gets overturned, what do you think the odds of the profile groups moving on the liberal states to stop or change their laws? And we kind of talked about this earlier. Is well, they won't change their laws. They're going to stick with exactly what they want. There are going to be the extreme lefts pushing for conservative states to change their laws, but places like California, New York, that we talked about earlier in this chat, they're not going to change their laws. It's going to be the same. And we chatted about this at the very, very beginning, mostly when Mike had stepped away for a moment. But yeah, they're not going to change their laws at all. And I'm sorry to cut in, but he just asked that question, so I thought I'd answer it.
No, very few states are going to change their laws. The states that were primarily poised to change their laws have already done so. Okay, Iowa came out today that they are going to wait on whether or not they're going to change their laws concerning abortion. Illinois is going to stay the same. Massachusetts is going to stay the same. New Jersey is going to stay the same. Rhode Island, Connecticut are going to stay the same. Maine's going to stay the same. Florida might change, but more than likely it's going to stay the same. The big states have already done it. Okay, Texas is one of those. We're not going to see that big of a change. But of course, the fearmongers all want to say it's going to be the end of women's rights.
We've so debunked that. It's so untrue. But, that brings up something. And I see what Dan made a comment, and he makes a good point, but and he makes a very good point there. But there's an elephant in the room that we haven't addressed yet. And that is, of course, the argument that you're men, so you don't have a voice in this conversation.
Yeah, I get told that all the
time. And here's my take on that. Until the moment that women can asexually reproduce, you need two people to make a baby, and that's a man and a woman. Not by the definition of aggressive ideology, but actual biology. You need a male, you need a female, that's how you make it. Which means that, yes, even though women carry the baby, men still have a voice in it. And even beyond that, stepping away from that completely, when there is a heartbeat, that is an entirely separate human being. It is an American citizen that has rights at that moment of life. So again, even if you want to say, well, men don't have a voice, which is a lie, because we're involved in the process from the very beginning. Even if you want to say that we don't have a voice, that child has a voice all its own, and it is a requirement of the government to protect them because they cannot protect themselves.
Right.
And Jesus Dan is saying this is a right These are rights we're talking about that cannot be changed by Congress.
Mm-hmm. Absolutely. Same. A friend of the program, again, without his permission, I won't mention names. Says such as pro-life activists may mobilize in California as an example. Yes, you are going to see pro-life movements in California, New York, Massachusetts, a lot of the hard left-leaning states, and some of the conservative-leaning states, but yes, if this happens, you're going to see some serious movements in the streets about this. This is not going to go unnoticed. This may not be as big as the George Floyd protests, but it's going to be a big deal. And there's going to be people in the streets, and it may be bigger, it may be more big. But asking for documentation that was published, I'll have to clarify what they mean on documentation that was published about this. I think nothing has officially been published because it was a leak. It wasn't an official statement from the Supreme Court. Unfortunately, without an official statement,
It was a
everything is
draft opinion.
hearsay. Yeah, it was an opinion, exactly. There is no physical documentation of this, and we will work on getting more links out that we talk about and reference things like that. But yeah, as far as your comment on mobilization goes, it's going to happen if RVW does get overturned. 100% you will see chaos in the streets.
They're already doing it. We already see that in several cities. They're already
It's
destroying.
already happening, and it's on purpose.
And by the way,
if you want to go the conspiracy route, the conspiracy theory route, one of the things that you can look at too is Democrats and Biden's numbers in particular were tanking. The economy was killing them. Inflation's killing them. I mean, there's all kinds of things. The stock market has been crashing left and right. They'll rally one day and then it'll lose even more ground the next day. And so there is some thought. Now, again, this is conspiracy type theory that the leak was also done to draw attention away from some of these other items that have been particularly damaging to the Democrat Party and Joe Biden in particular.
Well, the left has always been great at cover-ups.
Well, I disagree that it was meant to cover up, but I do believe that one of the points for this, the reason the leak came out is one, to gin up the progressive left, to get them motivated to be involved, because everyone is projecting that it's going to be a landslide loss for Democrats. So that gives them something, because there is nothing else. No other, whether it's international policy, southern border immigration, whether it's the economy, there's nothing else that Joe Biden is winning on. So this gives them a reason to come out and vote. But I think it's also, and I think this is maybe more important, is this is the reason why they can pack the courts. Something that they promised that they wanted to see done in 2019, 2020. They wanted to pack the court. And 80% of America for the last, since the 1930s, has said, no, we do not want to see more Supreme Court justices because it turns the Supreme Court into a circus. Well, this gives the excuse. If Roe v. Wade is overturned, now they get to say, well, we need to balance the court because it's out of alignment, which again is a lie. And therefore, they'll be able to pack the court and they'll have that sentiment to give them a justification that they could not get any other way. I think that's more the point than a distraction. It's a motivation to get votes and to pack the courts. And I think it's failed. I don't think most people agree.
With continued Democratic support, the filibuster is as good as dead, without a doubt. And they want it.
Yeah.
Well, they want to kill filibuster when it's not working for them.
Well, that's exactly right.
Okay.
They
and then
want to
they will
pack the
try to
court,
change the
and then
rules
they will
again.
shut it down.
If they destroy the filibuster, they will try. When they are no longer in power, they will try to reenact it.
Well, they won't. No, they know better. They'll kill the filibuster. They'll pack the courts, and then they'll reinstate the filibuster just to give themselves the upper edge. They're as asinine as things that we see are. They're smarter than they let up.
No, it's a smart strategy. I think it's a failed strategy, though, because which is again why they will not talk about late term abortion, which is critical to the conversation, because that is where they are pushing for. It's no longer, when we talk about abortion, they're no longer talking about whether or not there's a heartbeat. The left is talking about abortion up to and including the moment of birth. And that is what they're looking for. They want to be able to destroy these babies. They want to fulfill Margaret Sanger's original idea of eugenics and to remove entire generations of children.
Well, it's not.
Well, go ahead, Mike.
It's not that far removed from up to birth abortion to say, well, what about babies that are 2 months old? They're completely dependent. They're essentially parasites, or a year old, or 3 years old.
There are people out there who believe in partial
that
birth
far
abortion.
removed from the abortion conversation.
Yeah, the slippery slope never ends.
No.
You can always push it out further and further because the same logic, the same reasoning applies after birth as it does at the moment of birth. And that's why that's why we see that there's so much support around the nation from Democrats, moderates, the non-progressive, as well as everyone else in saying, okay, heartbeat is the line. That's the line. And they want us to think, no, that's not true. Yeah, that's where all the support is. That's when you actually ask the question, not just, do you believe abortion, some form of abortion should be allowed in the United States? It's what type, what circumstances, what situations. And again, this is why it cannot be a federal law or a federal mandate. It has to be individual.
Well, something else that we need to address here is, even though I do believe that fundamentally Roe v. Wade was incorrectly decided, there was still in Roe v. Wade a point of viability. When a child was considered viable, then abortion restrictions on abortions were applicable. And again, that is something where the pro-abortion, pro-baby killers have taken that meaning to beyond what its actual intent was. Okay. If we actually look at history, okay, Roe v. Wade was decided in 1972. At that point, a baby had to make it quite a ways in the term of the pregnancy in order to be considered viable. My youngest son was born 11 weeks early. He was born at 29 weeks. In some states, he could have still been aborted.
In New York State, he could have been aborted.
Okay. Well, in a lot of states, even the ones that haven't gone to that extreme, he could have been aborted at 29 weeks. We've seen that. I forget what the earliest viable baby,
5 months,
the earliest term live birth was. I think it was 19 weeks.
5 months.
And he survived. Okay. So 19 weeks is viable. With advances in medicine, you can actually have a baby from fertilization that is viable, that can actually thrive outside of the womb of the mother. So that is a viable baby because of medical advancements that we've made. They are coming up with medical advancements now where a mother won't even be needed in order for a baby to go from conception to birth with no human interactions.
Test tube
Okay.
baby.
So, well, yeah, test tube baby. But that was the original test tube baby was originally carried by a woman, a surrogate mom.
Yep.
But they are developing technology where they have artificial wombs.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, and that was the whole reason for the test tube baby, was to prove that it could be done.
Right. And so if that's the case, then viability starts from the moment of conception.
That's correct.
It is no longer a point during the pregnancy. It is that from the start of the pregnancy all the way through. And that was originally what Roe v. Wade declared. Was when a baby was viable, then abortions were no longer allowed.
There's so many ways that we look at this, and we've been looking at a lot of the objections, a lot of the law, and everything always comes back to the same thing. And the pro-abortion, let's call it what it is, the pro-murder of babies, always loses. It's incredible.
Well, it's all in the wording, Vass. Like you said, the murder of babies. Like we said, the murder of a fetus, whatever you want to call it. The problem is, and depending on how you look at it, life is life is life. There are people who will advocate for, as they refer to, I think the term is partial birth abortion, where as long as the whole body's not out, as long as only the head is, they can sever the spinal cord and still justify it as abortion. No, it's murder. And saying that, oh, it's a dependent cell on somebody else, so it's not its own cell. Well, you guys may cut me off for this, but I'm sorry. There are people who are handicapped, who are dependent on other people, and if they get murdered, it's murder.
Right.
Yeah.
Exactly.
And to say that they're dependent on other people, so they're just a parasite. Well, I've got plenty of people that I know who are Down syndrome and handicapped that I love more than life itself. And if anyone were to try to take their life and justify it by saying that, oh, well, their life doesn't matter because they're dependent on somebody else, I would stand up for their life.
And we should. And again, that is.
Where does it stop?
Well, it's the opposition to Margaret Sanger, because Sanger was against people who had Down syndrome, as well as many different races. So again, this whole movement at its core is about murder, and it's generally been applied as a targeting of certain types of people, whether they have disabilities or whether they're certain races.
And even today, it's still a targeted means.
Oh, yeah.
Okay.
That's why almost all Planned Parenthoods, there's 90 of them, 90 locations across the United States. No, 390 of which are only in major cities. Tells you who they're targeting.
Right. Well, exactly. And then you take and look at the fact that there is a hypocrisy on all of this, because if somebody murders a woman while she's pregnant, then that person can be charged with 2 counts of murder.
Double murder, yeah.
So in that case, the baby's considered alive. Why isn't it considered alive when somebody is aborting it?
Well, it's perception fitting the agenda.
Yeah. which is why you don't hear any of the Democrats talk about these cases that are settled law. Like they say, there are precedents on this that they don't want to address because it doesn't fit their power grab.
Well, let's go ahead and get this wrapped up. Okay, we've been talking for over 2 hours now on this. Okay, and there's much more that we can talk about and discuss over this. Essentially, what we need to start understanding is that the Constitution was there to protect the individual from the majority.
Mm-hmm.
And there's certain reasons and certain areas where our federal government was given authority over, and there are many areas where that authority was purposely withheld. And the reason why that authority was purposely withheld was the fact that the majority could discriminate against the minority. And regardless of how you want to look at majority or minority, you can look at it in terms of race, you can look at it in terms of sex, you can look at it in terms of political affiliation, you can look at it in terms of religion. I don't care how you look at it. The whole purpose of the Constitution was to defend against oppression of minority groups from majority parties.
Yeah.
Okay. And if we take and start looking at it at the Constitution in that manner, and we start realizing that the Constitution protects us when we are in the minority, then we'll start understanding why the Constitution is so important and why we need to have government adherence to the Constitution and why we need to start standing up for it. With that, I'm going to go ahead and say goodnight. If you guys like what we're doing and you want to help us out, please like, share, comment, and subscribe to our channels. If you want to help us even more, you can take and get a membership with our affiliate, U.S. Law Shield. If you get a membership through them, it doesn't cost you any more. In fact, I think you get a little bit of a discount if you sign up through our link at l1f.us/US Law Shield. We will get credit for it, and you'll be helping us out, and you'll get some protection if you're ever involved in a legal matter involving a gun or firearm. You can also make a donation on our site at l1f.us. Again, I want to thank everybody that contributed to the conversation and that joined and watched our episodes tonight. With that, I'm going to go ahead and sign off. Have a great day, and thank you for watching.
Night, everyone.
Good night.